If you listen beneath the headlines, beneath the noise of our politics and our economies, you can hear it. A deep collective sigh, a feeling of something missing, a social loneliness. We sense the deficiencies, the conflict, the fragmentation. And a question hangs in the air of our age. Have we, in our great journey of progress, lost something essential? To understand this ache, we must embark on a voyage, not forward into prediction, but backward into memory, a memory not of events, but of the human soul itself. We must travel from the bustling, individualistic heart of modern Europe to the ancient, dreaming soul of Asia. For our story begins not with machines or markets, but with a fundamental shift in consciousness. Imagine a world not yet awake to the sharp, separate I. This was the ancient Orient, a civilization of profound spiritual depth, where the self was subdued, resting in the depths of the soul, like a child in the womb. Here, a person did not stand out, shouting, "I am." They flowed into the community, the ritual, the cosmic order. In this world, the healer, the priest, and the teacher were one. Why? Because to educate the spirit was to heal the soul. To know the divine was to cure a fundamental human guilt, a feeling of being born unwhole, in need of purification. They sought not self-expression, but self-dissolution into a higher communal reality. In the mysteries, to be reborn spiritually, one first underwent a ritual death of the earthly self. Art, religion, and science were not separate departments of life, but a single sacred breath. This was not primitive. It was a high civilization, built on a different sense of being. But it was a civilization built, we must remember, over a silent foundation. The labor of the many, the slaves, was like the beating of a heart no one consciously heard. The social organism was primary. The individual person was secondary. Then a stirring, a migration of soul westward. Into this ancient communal dream stepped the Greek spirit. And on the temple at Delphi, a new commandment appeared, shining like a challenge. Know thyself. It was as if the vague, oceanic feeling of the Orient was being asked to focus, to reflect upon itself. Greek tragedy performed this alchemy. It took the communal ritual and turned it into a mirror for the individual soul. Aristotle said its purpose was catharsis, a purification through pity and fear. But this was more than an aesthetic experience. It was soul training. By witnessing the heroic suffering of another on stage, the citizen learned to feel beyond his own skin. His sense of self was being strengthened, called out of the dream, taught to bear the weight of its own existence. Yet, even in Plato's brilliant vision of an ideal state, the old shadow remained. The community was still the masterpiece. The individual found worth only by fitting its mold. The I was a note in a chord, not yet a soloist. Then came the great tidal movement of history. Northern tribes, pulsing with a raw, unformed sense of self, streamed into the inheritance of the Greco-Oriental world. They brought with them a new force, a fiery, natural individuality. Their historical task was not to dream the communal dream, but to awaken the dreamer. This is the pivot of our modern dilemma. The Orient sought to rescue the individual from the community. Modern Europe faces the opposite task, to integrate the awakened individual back into a community. And here is the source of our modern ache. For centuries, we have labored magnificently to build the I. We declared its rights. We prized its freedom. We unleashed its creativity in art, science, and technology. This is our glory, our dignity. But in doing so, we severed the old connections. The doctor, the teacher, and the priest became strangers to one another. Labor became a commodity, stripped of soul, something we sell rather than a gift we embed in the social body. The cobbler no longer sees his soul in the shoe. The writer may never meet the reader. We stand at our separate posts, proud in our selfhood, but isolated. Our work often feels like energy vanishing into thin air, into a vast, impersonal system. We have, as the lecture says, a highly developed sense of self, but cannot connect it with a real insight into man. We have perfected the arrow of the individual, but lost the bow of the community to launch it with meaning. So what is the healing? It is not, as some say, to destroy individualism. That would be to kill our hard-won soul. The cure is not to go back to the ancient, unconscious unity. It is to move forward to a new, conscious unity. The Oriental task was to find the man in society. Our European task is to find society in the man, to feel the social order not as an external constraint, but as an inner reality, to look at another person and not see a competitor for rights, but a limb of the same social body, whose need is my concern, whose joy is my nourishment. To make our work interesting again, not because of the product, but because of the human being it serves. This requires a new step in the life of the soul. It asks us to develop a faculty of imaginative identification, to transpose our I into the I of another, to see with their eyes, feel with their heart, not in sentiment, but in lived understanding. The teacher must understand how a lesson affects the child's growing body. The doctor must sense the spiritual story behind the illness. The worker must see the journey of his labor into the web of human needs. This is not a return to the old priest-healer teacher, but the birth of a new consciousness where all professions are reunited in understanding. Even as they are separate in function, we stand at this crossroads. The pessimist, seeing only the fragmentation, the conflict of all against all, may set a date for a collective suicide of the spirit. But the one who sees with the eye of the soul perceives a different possibility, not an end, but a rebirth that begins not with new economic system, but with a new inner gesture, the gesture that turns our powerful, lonely I outward in empathy, that asks not what is my right, but what is my responsibility in the whole, that seeks to complete the great work begun in Greece, to truly know thyself, and in that knowing, to find an entire human community living within you. The day of understanding is not a date of demise. It is a day we choose to weave our shining, separate threads of self into a new, conscious tapestry of we. And that day begins with a quiet, courageous work of turning our attention, soul by soul, toward each other.